And like you, I didn't want to let my parents down. So I worked hard in school. I read everything I could get my hands on. I did my absolute very best on every single assignment. I did everything in my power to be a good student. I dreamed of one day going to one of the best universities in America. But despite my efforts, there were still people in my life who told me that I was setting my sights too high, that a girl like me couldn't get into an elite university. It was like these folks were trying to put me in a little box, a box that fit their constrained expectations of me. And after a while, I started to wonder, well, maybe I was dreaming too big. What if these folks were right? See, back then, I didn't know what my future held. I didn't know that I'd be accepted to a top university. I didn't know that I'd go on to get a law degree and become an NGO director and a hospital executive and eventually First Lady of the United States. Those kinds of achievements seemed totally out of reach when I was your age. I was just a working class kid from a good community with limited resources. Neither of my parents and hardly anyone in my neighborhood went to university. And I wasn't even sure my family could afford the tuition. I didn't have anyone to help me study for entrance exams. And the fact that I was a girl and that I was Black, well, that certainly didn't help things either. When I was growing up, there were very few Black women at high levels in business or politics or science on TV. So I didn't have many professional role models to look up to. And I have a feeling that my experience might feel similar or familiar to some of you. Maybe you look at the leaders in your businesses and laboratories and government and wonder whether there's a place for someone like you. Maybe you've heard about the kinds of tutors and prep courses and other advantages that wealthier students can afford. And you wonder how you ever will compete. Maybe you feel like no one's paying attention to you, like you're lost in the shuffle at home or in this huge city. And you wonder whether it's worth it to even aspire to be something great. And maybe you read the news and hear what folks are saying about your religion, and you wonder if people will ever see beyond your headscarf to who you really are, instead of being blinded by the fears and misperceptions in their own minds. And I know how painful and how frustrating all of that can be. I know how angry and exhausted it can make you feel. But here's the thing. With an education from this amazing school, you all have everything you need to rise above all of the noise and fulfill every last one of your dreams.
That's interesting, because when you mention education, I wonder, it feels like a lot of the time people feel held back, whatever they're doing actually, but acting is one of the problems, by a lack of confidence and a sense of sort of imposter syndrome. Yeah. And I wonder, do you think education's the key to unlocking that, so that people actually feel, well, look, actually I've got the same education as anybody else?
I do, of course. It's really imperative, but then I sometimes think we get obsessed with that then therefore you are not worthy, therefore if you can't compete with these people who've been, have got that elitist sort of education. And I think that's where we are at the moment in society. People are petrified of speaking up, I think, because they think they haven't got the terminology. I suffer from it. I think, I haven't got the words, and sometimes you go to things and you think, I don't even know what they're talking about. But that's their fault. If they can't speak in a way that everyone can understand, then they ain't clever as far as I'm concerned.
I will tell you why, and so shall my anticipation prevent your discovery. And your secrecy to the king and queen moult no feather. I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercises, and indeed it goes so heavy with my disposition that this goodly frame the earth seems to me a sterile promontory. this most excellent canopy, the air, look you, this brave, oh, hanging firmament, this majestical roof fretted with golden fire. Why, it appeareth nothing to me but a foul and pestilent congregation of vapours. What a piece of work is a man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me.
The daughter of an immigrant mill worker from Yorkshire doesn't normally end up sitting in the Foreign Office and at the cabinet table. I don't fear being principled, I don't fear speaking out. I feel that there is a bigger purpose to all of this and that we are all accountable for our actions. My parents originate from Pakistan. They migrated here in the early 60s. I'm one of 5 girls, so I grew up in a really strong female family, a strong working class family in the north of the United Kingdom, in quite a mixed kind of community, quite a conservative Muslim community, as well as a working class local community. Coming from an all-female family meant that we ended up with a mum who was very focused on ensuring, as she kept telling us, that we had to be better than the boys, and a father actually who became a huge feminist. And so in that sense, I think we were lucky that we were given the opportunities that many of the girls that I grew up with weren't. You know, we were, as sisters, we were one of the first cohort of girls to be from the Asian community to be at university. I remember very few Asian girls being at university in the 70s and 80s. And I look back now at so many girls who were far more talented than me at school, whose lives and opportunities were cut short because of the conservative views at the time.
Well, can I say to the Home Secretary that the relationship between this country and the West Indies and Caribbean is inextricable. The first British ships arrived in the Caribbean in 1623. And despite slavery, despite colonisation, 25,000 Caribbeans served in the First World War and Second World War alongside British troops. When my parents and their generation arrived in this country under the Nationality Act of 1948, they arrived here as British citizens. It is inhumane and cruel for so many of that Windrush generation to have suffered so long in this condition, and for the Secretary of State only to have made a statement today on this issue. Can she explain how many have been deported? She suggested earlier that she would ask the High Commissioners. It is her department that has deported them. She should know the number.
I believe schools should equip children with a basic bag of goodies, an essential bag of goodies that will allow them to become successes in life. That bag of goodies contains things like knowledge on history, geography, science, maths, skills like reading and writing, analysis, being able to deconstruct a concept and put it back together again, discipline, being able to sit on a chair, hold your pen, being able to be on time, meet deadlines, and so on, in order to ensure that all of our children, not just our middle-class children, have access to that essential bag of goodies. The middle-class child, when he goes home, has access all the time to that bag of goodies because he sits down to dinner and discusses the news with his parents, picking up historical, maybe facts about geography and science as he goes. His mum might employ a maths tutor for him after school, and dad might read with him at bedtime. The disadvantaged child is not so lucky. The disadvantaged child doesn't have the constant repetition and exposure to that essential bag of goodies, which is what the middle-class child has. And the middle-class child's home can so easily compensate for the failures of the school. The child of privilege will never have a situation where that bag of goodies is made inaccessible to him because of his home. Other children, however, depend entirely on their schools to provide them with that bag of goodies.
I think positive action is an acknowledgement of the structural barriers that take place to exclude people from systems, be it from politics, from the boardroom or whatever. And actually, just a very local, you know, the Labour Party has 45% of MPs are women because they took decisive action. I was selected on an all-woman shortlist. I got there by merit, I'm telling you now. It wasn't because I was just put up, I was put up against a pool of very, very capable women, I have to say. I just want to make one last point though, David, and that's that we are obsessed with the top, it seems. The biggest barrier in life to any kind of achievement is your socio-economic status, so what class you are, and how you achieve is very much about what opportunities are afforded to you. So I'm less concerned with the boardroom and I'm more concerned with how much the lowest paid workers are being treated in this country.